Songwriter.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so much for being part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Of course. Hey, where is everybody? We have a few here. May Wood from Long Beach, California is in the house. Paul Fleming from Atlanta, Georgia is in the house. And AVQ, the one and only, Michael Rudden is in the house. And La Preciosa, La Hermosa, Yvette Avery Herod is in the house. But where is everybody else? If you're here, folks, let's go ahead and show your face. Let's go ahead and show your face. And by the way, why am I seeing something that I shouldn't be seeing here as far as the project. You know what just happened? I must not have hit the go key because as it turns out, some of what the program is about is not showing up correctly on the screen. So now as it turns out, I'm going to have to go ahead and go into Restream and see what's going on with what was supposed to be showing up on the screen, and I'm not sure what occurred there, but it looks like it wasn't saved off, so I'm going to have to do it again, folks. So just bear with me as I make a few corrections here and there. And as I make those corrections here and there, I think we will be in great shape. Put in, okay, at least the one part of it was correct. The title was just incorrect. All right, I just have to change the title. Okay, it looked like the rest of it was just fine. The title was not. So I am fixing that as we speak right now. Anyway, how's everybody doing? It's Thursday, one more day till the real weekend is here, and I know we can't wait. I have a great interview for you today, somebody who studied the creation of Israel. We're going to talk Zionism. We're going to do it in a calculated and good manner. So I want everybody to just get with the program. And again, we're going to have a good show for you today. So Lee Grant is in the house. No visual on FB. What do you mean by no visual on FB? I sure hope I'm looking at FB right now. I can see it, my dear brother Grant. All right, breaking news. Biden gives Ukraine permission to strike Russia territory with U.S. weapons, but only near Kharkiv, Politico via VNO. Also, from Paul Fleming News, IRS News just announced Americans in all 50 states can file taxes directly with the government next year for free. After direct files resounding success this year, I urge the IRS to expand the program and make it a permanent option for taxpayers instead of subsidizing corporations with, again, right now, we imagine this: we have to pay a private company to prepare a taxes for information the government already knows. If that isn't the biggest form of welfare for corporate America, I don't know what is. I want you to think about that again. The government has all the information on that we do for taxes, except for things we get in cash. They depend on our honesty to give that out, right? But when it comes to your wages, the government gets a W 4 from the company. You get the W 2, they get a W 4. When it comes to every little piece, they have your information. At 1099, they have all that information. Your interest rates collected at banks, they have that information. You know, so why do we TurboTax and all of that again? It's a welfare for corporations. I don't hear a lot of our people complain about that. All right, Paul Fleming says Chief Justice Roberts has refused a request to meet with Senator Durbin and White House to discuss the Supreme Court's ethics and Samuel Alito's flag controversies. You see, these guys think they are of the belief that they can do as they please, right? They don't answer to anybody. And that's just how they feel. They answer to nobody. And when you have that kind of a feeling, that's how you behave. And that is exactly how they behave. All right, let's see if I can make a couple more changes on this thing before. Come on, come on, come on. Be quiet, be quiet. Let's see if we can make some changes here to the system before I go to the before I go ahead and start the video. Actually, you know what, folks? Eric says, guess you know when it's time to change vocations. Reports are coming out that Angel Hernandez retirement came out from a meeting with top MLB officials. Officials were questioning Hernandez's ability to see and comprehend correctly. Angel got so worked up that he stormed out and slammed the door behind himself. It took Angel 10 minutes to realize he was in the closet. His announcement of retirement came soon after. Oh boy, he was probably high. All right, 45,000 Teslas stored at strip malls as they can't be sold. Yeah, if you don't have a quality car, that's what happens, right? China is selling electric cars left and right. I should find that TikTok for you, Eric. Let me see if I can find that TikTok for you, because I'm going to show you what people on the right have done to our country. I'm going to try to find it to show you what people on the right, why I call them a clear and present danger, because that is what they are. What is it again? Where do we go? TikTok. I think I found it on TikTok. Let me see what I saved off in TikTok. Maybe that is where I can find it. And then when I find it, I'll let you know. But for now, let's go ahead and get started with the first video of the day, the interview that I did with Abba Samson. Abba Salison. Let's go ahead and do that real quick, and then we'll take it on the other side. Let's first shut you down. Come on, guy. I need you to be quiet. Be quiet. There you go. Be quiet. All right, here we go. Here we go. Right this minute. Come on, I'm ready. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Today we're honored to have Abba A. Solomon. Abba Solomon is a former computer programmer and visual artist who was brought up in a secular home with a Jewish education. On summer visits to New York City in 2007 and 2008, he became interested in his parents' and grandparents' lives in New York. Starting research at the New York Public Library and the American Jewish Historical Society, he encountered discussions of Zionism and Zionist literature of that time. I think it is apropos that in these times we have a discussion with El Señor Abba A. Solomon. Welcome to Politics Done Right, Abba.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask you, before we even get started, exactly, and I want this in simple terms for my audience, what is Zionism?
That's a good question. Zionism is not necessarily even territorial. It is a belief that Jews around the world are a nationality, should nurture a common culture, and as part of it, there's a territorial component in the sense of there should be a homeland, a central place to pursue development of culture and identity. There's cultural Zionism you see in the revival of the Hebrew language. And there's also political Zionism, which was the belief in creating a political Jewish state. And that was not always Palestine, but it became Palestine very quickly, especially with the Balfour Declaration. But it's a belief in territorial reassembly, ultimately.
Now, let me ask you this then. First of all, you said territorial as well, not necessarily Palestine. Kind of give me some understanding on that, because I hear different stories, and it seems sometimes as if it had to be Palestine. Am I correct in that belief or not?
Yes, because that had the most connection historically. But at one point, the founder, basically the most well-known forefather or founding father of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, was dealing with the British on the idea of Uganda as a home. Also, Argentina. The idea was to find a place, because there was the pressures here were from Eastern Europe, were from under the Tsar, and oppression there in Poland, Ukraine, Russia, where since there was a deterioration. There was a lot of political ferment and repression, and Jews were in the way, or were in experiencing mob violence and persecution. And so there was an urgency for poor and persecuted Eastern Europeans to have a place of refuge.
Now, let me ask you this now. Tell me, and please, maybe I'll display some of my ignorance. What exactly is a Jew?
There is the religious definition, which is, the religious definition is people who have been a member of the Jewish community, recognized, who are born of a recognized Jewish mother. There are secular Jews. Half of the Jews in the world are not particularly religious, but there's a qualification. There's still that qualification. But it's become much more flexible in the 20th century in the sense of patrilineal rather than matrilineal parenting. but it is a paradoxical ethno-religious group that is ethnic, but also you can convert into. But it does not evangelize.
And the reason I ask that is the Jewish population have people who have, let's say, and I understand race is a social construct and all that sort of stuff, but now a particular group of Africans, I'm talking about Black pigmented Africans, got into the Jewish sect. We also have white pigmented Europeans into the Jewish sect, and we have those the what we would look at as Arab-looking type folks that are into the Jewish sect. So whereas a Ugandan can probably say we have these particular characteristics that make us Ugandan. Is there any characteristic that makes a Jew, or is it just genetically, or is it just something that a religion mostly?
Oh, that's a hard one. There is research that purports to find that even among Ashkenazi Jews, Russian, Polish, can trace, or geneticists can trace back to Palestinian or
Lineage.
Judean origins. But you have, yes, I mean, it's a very confusing subject because you have Ethiopian Jews and you have Irish Jews.
Right.
But it's doctrinal, and it's a feeling internally of we are part of this culture. It's not racial. It is descendants of Abraham.
Okay.
And holders of the covenant.
Okay. Now, in that sense, as you explained, the Zionism is putting all this culture together, wanting to have a particular state. Now, as it was chosen, Israel was given a state, a piece of land, correct?
Do you mean historically or in the 20th century?
Well, I would rather historically to kind of know how it came from. Was there a Jewish state at any other time before 48?
Well, yes, there was Judea at the time conquered by the Romans, and conquered by the Romans, as we know in Jesus's time. Mm-hmm. But there had been, basically, there are periods, they figure about 500 years of Jewish kingdoms at the time. Yes.
And were they in one place? Were they in Palestine? Where were they?
Well, there was one, and then there was two kingdoms. Judea and Samaria is what we call the areas now. Mm-hmm. And the idea basically is that after the Romans and after rebellions against the Romans, there was diffusion of Jews throughout the world. The diffusion actually didn't start with the exile. There was a great Jewish community in Alexandria, in Egypt, in Rome, in Greece, in Greece, Greek possessions around the Mediterranean. So we've always been mobile.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the formation of Israel now, can you explain to us how that came to be and what's the reality of that country per se?
Well, it's unique in the sense that it was an outgrowth of a number of forces. There was one that's very interesting, which is Christian Zionism, which became a thing in the 1800s, which was kind of a romantic idea and a religious idea that if Jews went back to Palestine and rebuilt the temple, that would mean something for Christians. That's one element that we still see around. It's an important force in the United States, Christian Zionism. But there was this great need in Eastern Europe for refuge. The United States and Canada, the North America was a great place, was an important refuge for people from Eastern Europe, Jews from Eastern Europe. But it also became, there was before Herzl and in the 1890s with Herzl, it became a fairly large or important movement in Eastern Europe among certain Jews that instead of being in this condition of persecution and minority status, that Jews could probably return to Palestine and build a homeland. And that homeland, that idea hooked in with British needs. In 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, where Balfour was where Britain was in a war. There was British need for American help, and there was a thriving American Jewish community, and there was the British Jewish community and a German and Russian Jewish community. And the idea was if they could get American Jews and Jews elsewhere on the British side, that could be to their advantage. And there's questions about how they made that promise. And they also made promises to Arabs they were negotiating with at the same time to offer, if they would unite against fighting the Turks, who the British were fighting with, then the Arabs would have sovereignty in various Arab lands. So they made a number of, and also they made a deal with the French, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. There's a great book, I think, titled the Twice Promised Land, talking about the British promises for Palestine and other lands of the Mideast. But the origin at that point, the promise the British made in the Balfour Declaration was for a homeland, but was not for a state. But from the Zionist point of view, for political Zionists, they felt that a state was the ultimate goal of that. And really 17, 28, 30 years later, 20 years later, they achieved the state in 48, declared it against the wishes of Palestinian non-Jewish residents of Palestine, and in a war that they had that really started in 47, drove away 750,000 non-Jews from the territory that became Israel.
So in other words, that was what in the post-war era, that would have been the first genocide in the Palestinian area.
Yeah, ethnic cleansing, certainly.
Ethnic cleansing.
And so what you had was this young state in 48 of people who had been driven out into refugee camps in Jordan and Libya and Syria, basically. 750,000, enormous loss of population, but a big gain in land for the new Jewish settlers. And they needed that because, they felt they needed it because they needed to, there was war refugees from Europe. And also at that point, this poisoned the relationship between Jews and the Arab world. So there was a great migration of Jews in Morocco or Egypt or Syria or Lebanon to the new state of Israel. The important thing is that when all of this period from 1890 onwards, when the people started for the purpose of building a new Jewish community in Palestine, when they were emigrating to Palestine, the Jews, they were not emigrating to fit into the current society, to go find employment, participate in what was already there. This was a unique form of settler colonialism. For one thing, there wasn't a mother country that they were coming from, but it was also that they were settlers, not immigrants. They were not immigrants to participate in the country. They were there to build something new. And there was a taboo against economic cooperation and building enterprises jointly with Arabs. Of course, there was the linguistic differences because people who came there, they would learn Hebrew and not Arabic generally as the new language. So you were creating a parallel country, and that had great damage to any prospects in the future for cooperation.
And then, of course, and if I'm to understand that right, they came there to take something away from those who already had it, correct?
Well, they came and bought from absentee landlords, from perhaps Syrian owners or from Lebanon or whoever owned property that was tilled by local fedayeen, local peasants, tenant farmers. So that was one irritation, was that if they bought that to create Jewish-run farms or collectives and kibbutzim and moshavim, they were pushing out other people who then would lose their livelihoods. Yes, because they didn't have a concept that it was a functioning society that you were joining. It was simply available. This was still, if you understand, from the planning stages, and this was very Eurocentric, and then American Jews contributed a lot to this financially to donate. This was conceiving of Europeans and then the concept of natives in a pejorative sense. So they were not considered people to deal with in the sense of negotiate and find accommodation with, because there was, for instance, the authority of the British, who actually ran the place from 1917 to 1948. So the important people to deal with were the British, and not to find common cause with yes.
Now, so when we look at today, what has transpired today, is it then a battle that any country or any territory that gets occupied, is it not something that one would expect, that you would have this type of a battle over the lands that you've been on and maybe kicked off in whatever form?
I've thought about this a lot. The underlying philosophy of reassembling Jewish people in Palestine, there's an ultimate sense of vulnerability and a entitlement because of that vulnerability and, historic tragedies, that it must be done, and eventually others will understand it.
That is, let's reflect that to the United States of America. How would that go if the natives in America felt that way for having been conquered, right?
Well, certainly. The parallel, by the way, the Israelis will, when you're talking with Israelis, they will say, how can you be on your high horse about this, from Australia, if you're from Australia or America or Canada, because the parallels are there. They say, why are we held to such a standard? And because our need is so great and our vulnerability is so great, and and they will say, this small piece of land in the middle of the Arab world, why can't they accept that we need this little bit? Now, it happens to be very key geographically, of course, and historically.
Yeah, and I find that ironic, because even today on one of my programs, I pointed out that really, I don't know that America has the moral authority to tell Netanyahu to stop doing what he's doing in Gaza, because, again, we've done that in Panama, we've done that in Iraq, we've done that in Afghanistan. But specifically, when it comes from a territorial point of view, we've actually done that right here in the United States. So, I mean, we opened ourselves to that argument, but my next question is, how do you not then empathize with those whose land another group of folks just come up and take? How do you not empathize? Is my question. Without someone stating that you're anti-Semitic.
Well, the entire mythology of settlements has always been you build. Well, the creation of the Israeli homeland settlements was you would build a fence and a stockade, and you'd have this safe place within, for the kibbutz, and you would have guards, and you would protect against depredations from the non-Jews who might come to steal or want to hurt you. Now, that psychology is writ large now. Even though, I mean, this is a really complex situation because 20% of the citizenry of Israel is not Jewish.
Right.
The Palestinian Israelis.
Right.
And they do have autonomy and the vote. I mean, individual freedom and autonomy since 1966. Before then, they were under military rule,
Right.
even within the country. But they have created a new Jew. That was the idea. Able to defend themselves. Now, this is an entirely different psychology than most American Jews, who don't feel under the same kind of threat unless they've adopted the militant nationalism idea that Jews can never trust anybody, that ultimately everybody will turn on us. And if you push that idea that the identity itself means that we're always going to be betrayed, we're always under threat, and we better always have this safe harbor, and it must be mighty. That's why the whole idea of ever letting refugees back in '49 was never seriously considered, because the idea was majority meant safety. Jewish majority meant safety. Now, when Israel was accepted in the United Nations in 1949, they said they would follow Security Council Resolution 191, which said anybody who is willing to, for Arabs of Palestine. And they said, well, of course, yes, we will follow that. It never was of any interest whatsoever to let anybody back, because, and what they will say now, what they're still saying about the right of return for Arabs is, well, then we wouldn't have our country anymore, in the sense of our majority Jewish country, which we must have for existential existence, for existential reasons.
That is a psychology that is hard. And you're Jewish, it seems to me like in the studies that you've been doing, you actually reject that psychology. Is that correct?
Oh yes. I mean, I think it's a dead end. I think it's a very it's understandable, but you've got to get past it. Because there's so many periods of Jewish history which are not tragedy and which are not persecution, and which do involve, especially in the Arab world, cohabitation and cooperation with Christians and Muslims without it being, in other words, I don't think anybody can live that way.
And, it is interesting because when you have the victimhood mentality that I don't know, maybe explain to me, I don't think it is, it's realized. Because I think, let's say, Black Americans could have that victimhood mentality, Native Americans could have that victimhood mentality, and all of this. I wonder sometimes if the victimhood mentality isn't something from that the elite has to maintain power and indoctrinate the others just so that they can maintain that power, and in the process, a hell of a lot of people get hurt. Is that a wrong assessment?
Oh, yes. No, in part, military and security industry in Israel is very important. It's their main, I believe now their main export to around the world is equipment they use for controlling populations and surveilling populations in the West Bank and Gaza. All of these surveillance drones and technologies for surveillance and control are big money. So that in a sense, it's just like in the United States. If we're not at war or Cold War at any time, that's a big financial loss.
Right. Absolutely. So wrapping this up, what's your hope? Because one of the things that I wanted to get from you before I spoke to Norman about what was happening from 48 going forward, I'd like to ask you, what do you think the ultimate solution is going to be? Can we change a mentality that really
believes it's under persecution, in as much as I think a whole lot of people see the other side as the persecuted?
I'm thinking of James Baldwin, who talks about the importance of, or the function of fear and hate, because once you lose that, then you have to confront other things.
Right.
Nobody wants to feel like a victim or remember injuries. And if you can feel powerful instead and feel like you're fighting, then you don't have to think about what happened and process it. And for the early years, well, the Holocaust is not a popular subject in Israel, except as we mustn't let it happen again. But the vulnerability is very painful. The realization of having been vulnerable and that being a human condition. And you're never going to be without vulnerability if you're alive. I mean, maybe that's a little philosophical, but what in the early parts of this century, when the Zionists were trying to convince the American Jewish Committee and others to join the Zionist movement, the reaction of the leaders of a lot of American Jewish organizations was, this is fanatical and this is going to lead to conflict, because what about the other people who live there? And, there didn't seem to be any planning that this had to be acceptable and in cooperation with other people living in Palestine. Now they've gotten themselves into a jam where the only thing to do is to simply be more and more powerful and to have retaliation that always is more horrible than anything done to them, so that nobody will ever dare threaten. But you can see that now they're surrounded by a number of different forces that are making this course, leading towards Armageddon.
Does Israel Go ahead.
Yeah, the left is very small in Israel now. The people who are likely to say something like, "These are other human beings. They're like us. We need to find commonality." And of course, the ironic thing is that the Palestinians and Jews are very similar. They're both highly motivated to learn. Education is high. They're not dissimilar cultures. There can be cooperative, some sort of cooperative solution.
Well, I tell you one thing. I hope, Abba. I hope some of the things that you're frank about here will get some traction within the Israeli Jewish community, because I don't see an end to it at all. Again, I can't see a successful end for the Israelis at this point in time.
I wish I had more wisdom to share on this.
I think you had quite a bit of wisdom to share, because and I think our audience is going to get a whole lot out of an honest statement from somebody who grew up in a Jewish household, because there are very few that are willing to come out and make the statements that you have. So, Abba A. Solomon, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, now I have another interview to play tomorrow with Norman Solomon. It's the second part of this interview, and that particular interview will talk about the current situation. He went over how Israel was formed, Zionism, moving people off your land, the stigmatization of how many people who believe in a Jewish state feels, etc. We are going to touch on America's relationship with Israel, etc. At another. Actually, I think I'm going to play that one maybe tomorrow. If not tomorrow, we will get it in on another day. But let me try to play this for you. I hope I got the kinks work out on it. Because earlier somebody mentioned something about the electric cars. I think it was brother Eric Hayes. And he's almost rejoicing in the electric car. And it gets me sometimes, because what it means is we have such a backwards mentality. when it comes to doing things in progress, we are falling so far behind the rest of the world. Have you been to Shanghai? Have you been to airports all over the developing world and see what they are doing while we sit down and fight about cutting taxes to such a point that you can't get a damn thing done? Let's see if this will work. Let me first go ahead and I think this is a way to do it.
Japan is not living in 2050. You just live in the United States of America. High-speed rail, affordable health care, nice infrastructure. It's not just Japan. You can find this shit in China too, South Korea. Same shit. In fact, China probably does a lot of these things better. Do y'all like China the same way you like Japan? No. Y'all will literally call a smoothie machine advanced. Like, that's just crazy to me. I just want y'all to know that you're not supposed to see somebody addicted to meth on the ground in front of 7-Eleven when you want to go pick up a snack. That shit's not normal. Japan is not living in
This is
2050.
this is a short version of one this kid, not a kid, she's 26 years old, that she did. But the important thing that I wanted to get across that she talks about, right? She's like, look at our healthcare. Nobody's gonna have the kind of healthcare that we have and think you're a developed country. It is amazing. It is amazing. Netroot seminar on gun sense today, number at 5 o'clock. I'm wondering if I signed up. I had signed up for something yesterday and missed it. I don't know if I signed up for that one. Anyway, Egberto, what you said about Shanghai, it's one of the reasons I keep talking about infrastructure investment. I want our nation to be the envy of the world, not for our people when visiting foreign lands and seeing how they've built themselves up to wish we were more like them. And Radnin, that is so true. But you go to all over the world and you see better infrastructure. Panama, the country that I'm from originally, there was a time our internet was leaps bounds ahead of what I was getting here in Houston, right? Texas says, Michael Redden, oh boy, you're so right. The grocery store were packed. I think Costco was the worst. I buy coffee, bottled spring water, pay for good soap. For the hurricane, yeah, I think we're probably going to have to really start stocking up. It looks like it's going to be a bad season. Mike Cisak says China has horrible air pollution problems. True. China doesn't allow freedom of people. Do we allow freedom of people? What is freedom without health care? What is freedom if you have to stay at a particular job just to get health care? We have been fooled into believing that our form of freedom is the only freedom that makes sense. China has worse infrastructure and housing than we do in the US. Again, I tell you, go to Shanghai and see if that is a true statement. Go to Xi'an and see if that is a true statement. Go to go to just about every European capital in the world and see if that's a true statement. Every case says mandating EV or VAC is total power tripping of the government control of that. Yeah. So while we sit down and worry about government power tripping, remember, government is we the people. And if we the people say we want EVs, that's what we should get. But while we sit down and have silly, nonsensical, unintellectual talks about, oh, whether it's a government telling you to do electric vehicles, other countries are doing it. And you talk about dirty air in China. Yeah, they're cleaning up by doing a whole lot of solar, a whole lot of electric cars. Oh, it's going to take a while for them to clean up, It'll take a while for them to clean up, but at least they're moving in the right direction with the things that they're doing. Texas Blue Bonnet says, I'm concerned about you and your family out there in Kingwood, Egberto. I am concerned too, Texas Blue Bonnet. The good thing about it is I'm at one of the highest points in Kingwood, so we have not yet flooded. But given the kind of derechos that we're having and all these types of things, it wouldn't surprise me if it were to happen. Again, I am very concerned about the temperature in the Gulf of Mexico, as most of us should be. Mike Cisak says that the majority of people don't want EVs. Why then are you pushing it and spending people's tax money on it? The people don't want EVs. That's a joke. They would love EVs if they had charging stations and the infrastructure built. Which come first, the egg or the egg or the chicken? And luckily, that's why the Biden infrastructure project is working exactly on that. getting the infrastructure out there so that people can get their cars charged. Come on, man. Let's get with the program. Come on, let's get smart. Let's not continue to keep our heads in the sand, which is what many of us decide that we want to do. Let's not do that. Uh, anyway, folks, for those of you who believe in progress, what you can do now is disregard our brother Eric and Mike Cisak and go ahead and do what's good for the environment. We don't have to suffer through a Neanderthal type mentality that the people promoting them are doing. I have family and friends who drive a Tesla. They love it. Again, if you have the ability to charge, and if you don't live in a place where charging will be an issue, it will be great. It is likely great for you to do that. Anyhow, what is our next subject of the day? Our next subject of the day, and let me get to it right this minute. I was supposed to put it up on the screen before, but it's an article from Common Dreams. I love Common Dreams, and it goes as follows, and I think I can put that on the screen. Texas GOP wish list includes death penalty for abortion patients. We're talking about the official priority list of the governing party of the second most populous state in America, said one advocate and author. And it starts this way. Putting pregnant people to death for abortion has officially gone mainstream, said one reproductive justice group on Wednesday, as the Texas Republican Party considered a platform for 2024 that includes a new proposal to ensure equal protection for the preborn under the state's criminal laws. As writer and rights advocate Jessica Valenti, author of the Substack newsletter Abortion Every Day, explained on social media, the proposal within the state GOP's platform may have gone largely unnoticed as delegates voted on it last Saturday because the language used in the document doesn't explicitly call for abortion patients to face the death penalty. But that's exactly what equal protection for preborn means, said Valenti. Equal protection is a call for abortion to be treated as homicide and for abortion patients to be prosecuted as murderers, Valenti wrote, pointing to bills in South Carolina and Georgia that were both called the Prenatal Equal Protection Act and aimed to make abortion punishable as homicide. Plank 35 of the platform calls for Texas Republicans to pass legislation that would grant equal protection of the laws to all preborn children from the moment of fertilization. The 50-page document also states that abortion is not health care, it is homicide. In Texas, the murder of a child younger than 15 is punishable by the death penalty. And with equal protection for fetuses and embryos, advocates said this week that it stands to reason that people could also face execution for obtaining or providing abortion care if the state GOP enacts Plank 35 of its platform. If a fetus is considered a person, then it's considered a child. Farah Diaz-Teos, Senior Counsel and Legal Director at Lawyering for Reproductive Justice. If, when, how, told HuffPost, I wish I could say that the idea of the death penalty is a jump, but it is not. It's actually the next logical step. The reproductive rights group Abortion Access Front noted that the Texas GOP is apparently unfazed by being pro-life while pushing for the death penalty for people who obtain an abortion. They wrote, putting pregnant people to death for abortion has officially gone mainstream, unfazed by being pro-life. Texas conservatives adopt it. Thank you so kindly, Robert Davenport, for your super chat. Texas gets the government it deserves. Vote for fascists and you will endure fascism. Thank you so kindly for that super chat. We cannot do this without you, brother Robert Davenport. I appreciate that so kindly. Valenti cautioned against dismissing the proposal as one that's being promoted by a fringe contingent of the pro-force pregnancy movement. The Texas Republican platform is known for being wacky in the scariest ways possible. Delegates this year called for the Bible to be taught in public school, for gender affirming care to be labeled child abuse, and for the government to release all information on UFOs, she wrote. But the bizarre extremism doesn't make this document a joke or any less dangerous. We are talking about the official priority list of the governing party of the second most populous state in America. They are telling us that they believe and what they want for the future of this country, she added. Texas Republicans have previously proposed bills that would classify abortion care as homicide and make it punishable by death penalty, with measures failing to pass in the legislature in 2017, 2019, and 2021. Oh, wow. Tom C. says the Trump verdict is in. Verdict awaiting jury to fill out 34 charge sheets. Wow. I am going to say that means it's not a hung jury. Does that mean acquittal, or does that mean conviction? Or does that mean just conviction on misdemeanor charges? I guess we will find out shortly, but it will be great. It will be great. All right, folks. Anyway, I tell you what, let's go ahead right now and ask anybody, if anybody wants to call into the program at this time, call 281-823-7747. Otherwise, I will be dismissing the program to go ahead and get prepared for the verdict. So let's go ahead. If anybody wants to call me right now, thank you for that information, Tom C. Does anybody want to call me right now before I go ahead and retire to do some studying for the verdict? No hung jury can be convicted on 1 or 10 or all. But we don't know if it's a conviction or acquittal, right, guys? Tell me if I'm right or wrong. We don't know if it's a conviction or an acquittal, right? Or we don't even know if also it just may be a conviction on, let's see here. Let me get my other TV going. Wow, that is interesting. Ask Egberto this weekend. Yes, there will be an Ask Egberto anything this weekend. So stay tuned. We can probably talk about some of this as we speak. Let me go ahead and I'm getting one of my TVs. We have several TVs in here because I have got to follow what's going on all of the times. So let's go ahead and do a refresh, and let's go ahead and do a change station because we must join, and let's go ahead and see what we got here. Okay, enters Trump sitting shoulder to shoulder with Blanche. It's not in yet. Verdict reached in Trump criminal trial. Wow. That is interesting. That is interesting. Okay, folks, anybody want to call now? I'm waiting. Anybody want to call? I'm going to go. Hold on a minute. And if nobody calls in, we're going to end a bit early today. Let's see. Hung jury only after a week? Nope. It's not a hung jury. It's a verdict. That's what the signal says. It's a verdict. So we have a verdict that will be coming in. Jury has asked for 30 minutes to fill out the form at 4:53. Conviction. All the women in Texas are hoping. This is women who are saying, now's a good time to call it. See ya tomorrow. All right, folks. Anybody's going to call me. 281-823-7747. Thank you. It's a verdict. It's a verdict. It's a verdict. All right, folks. I'll do that. Thank you so kindly, folks, for spending this time with me. Please support the program. Before the verdict is over. Okay, Michael Cisak wants to speak. All right, Michael, you got your voice, Michael. How are you doing? My one. Hold on, Michael. Let me take you off of this special speaker so that we don't get a feedback.
Okay.
All right, Michael, how are you doing, sir?
Doing good. Doing all right.
Talk to me.
Keeping busy working.
By the way, are you still doing
I
your
got a few
farm
minutes,
work?
so
Are you still doing your farm work?
Yeah, doing farm work, doing computer work, doing all sorts of work. I got to pay the tax bill.
Yeah,
So,
you sure do. You sure do, because those people are not giving you what you deserve as a farmer who's keeping this country going. But don't worry, progressives will
Right.
be taking care of you when we take over. Anyway, talk to me, brother.
Right. Well, anyway, so I just kind of wanted to give a comparison because I've been watching this trial,
Uh-huh.
this sham trial, for Trump. And it basically kind of reminded me of another kind of situation where it used to be down in the South when the KKK was in its prime. They would have a trial, okay, and they would just grab any black person around. Didn't matter if they were doing anything or not. They just grabbed them and basically had a trial. And basically this trial here, kind of the same way. It's like, show me the person and I'll find you a crime. Okay. And so basically it's kind of the same as like, say if you were grabbed by the KKK and there was a jury of 12 KKK members and the judge was the Grand Master of the KKK, and basically said, you can find him guilty of anything, as long as we find something. You all don't have to agree. You can all find something different if you wish. And of course, I'm not going to give you any jury instructions. I'll just read them to you, and you have to remember 55 pages of it. But I'm not going to give you the paper to refer back to while you're doing your deliberations. So, of course,
no, but Mike, if I recall correctly, you don't think Donald Trump has ever done anything wrong. You don't think Donald Trump paid off anybody for at all. You don't think Donald Trump stole money for his charity, which he had to close. You don't think Donald Trump had a university that really was fraudulent by letting people think it was a real university. You don't really believe that Donald Trump actually was responsible for getting the insurrection on January 6th. You don't think Donald Trump did absolutely anything wrong. You don't think Donald Trump had stiffed a whole lot of people that built his hotels, right?
Don't give me the absolute.
No, what I'm asking you told me.
Saying,
yeah.
Look, I'm trying to focus on the trial here. Okay. Right. And looking at it, I mean, every single legal lawyer and legal pundit out there is scratching their head going, what the hell is this? This isn't a case. It's a sham. Every single one, all the liberal ones that are typically out there.
But that's not true. What I'm saying is, who told you that? I am watching the news every day, and everybody, I have not yet heard anybody say.
Other than MSNBC.
No, I'm talking.
CNN.
Yes, I've been to CNN, and here's what they're all saying. They're saying it's a novel case.
They're saying that, this is pretty much a sham.
No, that's not what they're saying, Mike. I watch them all. I even watch Fox News.
I watch them.
And I've been on Fox News watching how they describe it. It's not a sham. These are all legal. But I tell you what, I got to close the show down, Mike, but CSAC, I appreciate you being here with us. And I appreciate you constantly being here. As you know, you get your platform here as well, brother. All right?
Yep. All right, man. Later.
Have a great day. Bye-bye. All right, folks, you can support the program by going to politicsdoneright.com/support. That gives you all the different options, politicsdoneright.com/support. Alternatively, you can go to politicsdoneright.com/patron, become a patron. Please consider being a subscriber of our newsletter, preferably a paid subscriber. That helps us continue to do what we do here. And likewise, get our books at politicsdoneright.com/books. We got to get out of here, so I'm going to do that right now. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether